And welcome back, everyone. Next up will be Control, the Future of Entertainment. This panel features Lori Schwartz from Sony, Ted Schilowitz from Paramount, Marcy Jastrow from Arcadium, Tony Driscoll from Warner Brothers Entertainment, and Jake Zim from Sony. Please take it away.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Who Will Control the Future of Entertainment. We're coming to you live from Los Angeles with four of the really top minds in entertainment who are looking at a ton of different technologies and really trying to understand what is going to happen in the future and helping to plot the course. So we're going to dive right in because we have 30 minutes and I want you to hear from all these great minds. So we're going to start with Tony Driscoll, who's the SVP of Emerging Tech at Warner Brothers, and Tony's going to give us his perspective of where entertainment is going. And we're going to hit a variety of topics here: AR, VR, AI, and remote work, and a ton of different things. And we're going to see how it all fits together. So take it away, Tony.
Great. Thanks, Lori, and thanks for having me here today. I'm excited to be part of this virtual event. So I wanted to start with, the title of the panel is The Future of Entertainment. And the interesting thing about the future of entertainment right now is that because of COVID-19, a version of it is coming a lot sooner than many people had expected. And I say a version of it because I don't think it's as simple as accelerating what would otherwise have occurred if we weren't dealing with a global pandemic. I think we'll look back on this period as a bit of a watershed moment that put us on a path to a slightly different future. And what I mean by that is, we can start with the fact that a few 100 million people around the world have been spending a lot of time at home for the past few months, as we were just discussing before we jumped on the panel here. And people are dealing with a whole spectrum of emotions, and their consumption patterns have changed as a result. As an example, a lot of folks just have a lot more time on their hands right now to engage with entertainment. We're seeing that across all of our channels at Warner Brothers and Warner Media broadly. Two, the mix of entertainment types has been forced to shift away from in-person events like movie theaters and concerts and toward online content like streaming services and social platforms and gaming. And three, because of COVID and quarantines and all that sort of come with that, what people need from entertainment right now has shifted too. So now you're in this really interesting moment where we have increased consumer demand, a forced mixed shift to digital platforms, and a pretty substantial shift in consumer need states. And by the way, throw on top of that, that's the supply side dynamics, like the fact that premium live action production is still largely shut down across the industry, yet games and animation are actually doing quite well because of software driven workflows that don't require a lot of humans in close proximity physically on sets and sound stages. But circling back to the point around consumer need states for a moment, people are definitely consuming a good amount of entertainment right now, and a lot of it is people looking for escapism. But in addition to traditional consumption, they also want to connect and create, even more so than pre-COVID. On the consumption side, we're seeing a lot of interest in feel-good, nostalgic type of content, like old shows from the 90s like Friends or The Fresh Prince, and a general uptick in comedy and other lighter fare that we haven't seen in a while. In terms of connection, with the absence of in real life connections, people are also seeking out virtual communities and spaces to fill the need for social connectedness. And one great example of that has been a spike in Fortnite and the big events like the Travis Scott concert that I'm sure many people have watched. And another is simply things like Netflix Party, where groups can host virtual movie nights with their friends, and people are really kind of getting into this idea of social consumption right now, whether that's in the gaming space or even in traditional video. We're also seeing that digital creation is really going mainstream, whether it's social platforms like TikTok or virtual ones like Minecraft and Roblox and Fortnite Creative and others. So, bringing it all back to the fact that we're here at the Augmented World Expo, what does all this mean? Well, it means that people are more open than ever and actively seeking out new types of entertainment experiences, as many of the technical piece parts this crowd is familiar with are finally starting to come together. So you think of things like, continued growth in mobile AR and other untethered VR, 5G networks rolling out, along with deals with major cloud providers to deploy edge computing in those networks, increasingly sophisticated spatial mapping from variety of sources, game engines driving not only games, but also virtual characters and events and AR, VR and traditional animation, virtual production. There's a lot going on there. And of course, the incredible progress in many flavors of AI, whether it's GANs creating photoreal virtual humans, or the incredible text-to-speech work that's going to be powering virtual characters going forward, and the list goes on and on. So circling back to what I said a minute ago, I think the future of entertainment is incredibly bright and exciting, and the shifts that we'll see as a result of going through COVID together are going to make it even more interesting. I was referencing the panel description before I jumped on here too, and some of the questions that were posed there. One of them being, will there ultimately be room for traditional passive video and more interactive formats in the future? I think the answer is yes, of course. But I do think you're going to find more big IP franchises moving toward more deliberate and interconnected transmedia types of experiences that take full advantage of all these new technologies and platforms we're talking about. And per the current COVID situation, a lot of folks are questioning whether and to what degree people will eventually head back to movie theaters and concerts and sporting events and things like that. And I think the answer is certainly yes, they will. In fact, I suspect you'll see a lot of pent up demand for those types of experiences when it's safe to do so again. But again, because of all this increased consumption and trialing of new technologies right now, I think a meaningful number of fans will want to see those venue-based experiences up their game a bit and take advantage of a lot of the digital and virtual technologies we'll be discussing here at the conference in some sort of integrated and value-added way beyond sort of what was. So again, I think this future that we've all been thinking about is being accelerated, but because of this situation we're in right now, this moment in time, I think it is going to be a slightly different and probably even more exciting one after all said and done.
Thank you so much, Tony. We're going to jump over to Marcy Jastrow now, who's the CMO of Evercast. And Marcy's going to leap off of what Tony set for us as a lot of the behaviors that are happening. But how are we going to do all of this work now? So Marcy's going to give us a great perspective on that.
Yeah, hi, everyone. Good to see you today, or actually virtually see you. Following my stint at Technicolor, I was asked to come aboard a brand new company, brand spanking new, which is a platform similar to video conferencing that allows for creative collaboration in real time, low latency. And ultimately what happened was, pre-COVID, there was the idea of looking at production and seeing if we could cut down travel. Was there ways for editors not to have to travel to location? And were there ways for people to actually be able to collaborate over some sort of video conferencing system? Evercast was that platform. And we were getting some traction, quite honestly. We were in the middle of having conversations with some really big gaming companies as well as studios. But then the moment happened of COVID, and there was a 5-day period where production stopped and the entire city of Hollywood transitioned to either getting on planes to come back to Hollywood from whatever location they were in. But between the Avid rental companies having to set up Avids into people's homes and trying to find the best platform for people to actually continue to collaborate on and cutting, it became Evercast's moment. And so essentially what we're seeing is this concept of, hey, wait a minute. We thought that everybody had to sit shoulder to shoulder in the same room to collaborate. But if you have the right platform that has low latency, you can actually feel like you're over the shoulder working with an Avid and with an editor who's working on Premiere, Avid, any 3D artist who's working in any sort of visual effects. You could look at Game Engine and work within Game Engine because the streaming has zero latency. And so ultimately what we have found is this idea of remote work actually does work. And people are not feeling like I said to everybody else, I'm working somewhere between 12 to 14 hours a day because the amount of people that are coming to our website to find out about Evercast so that they can continue to collaborate, so that they can continue to work. We also are now seeing the shift into production where people are trying to put Evercast into the remote camera workflow. So we're working with rental companies of cameras. We're working with high-end camera companies. We're looking at ways for people to tech scout. So like we did in virtual production, where we taught people how to do a virtual tech scout in VR, we are showing people now, because it's hard to get some VR goggles at the moment, We're showing them how to do it using our platform, using Google Earth. And so what's been really interesting is taking all of the different things that I've learned over the last 4 years by being in this new world of emerging technologies and immersive medias, and now trying to take them and truncate them and throw them into this new platform for collaboration.
Oh, that's a great setting the stage for just more discussions to come. Jake, let's jump over to you. Jake is SVP of virtual reality over at Sony. And obviously there was great work happening in location-based entertainment, loving all the things that were happening there. Where do we sit now with all the great things that were happening in that space and beyond?
Well, I think what Tony said rings very true for virtual reality as well as the macro trends in overall entertainment. The idea that COVID has basically created an accelerant for trends that were happening pre-quarantine has made the future of entertainment feel maybe a little less future and more present. And I just want to touch on a couple trends that we're seeing that I think will play into the virtual reality conversation. The first being that regardless of the technology, storytelling is still and always will be at a premium. And so any great talent who can tell a story on whatever platform is still going to rise to the top. And I think that an interesting example of that is just the recent licensing deal that Joe Rogan did with Spotify. Here's someone who's created a brand in the podcast space, and Spotify, who is looking for great talent to use exclusively on their platform as they broaden out their subscription base, went after them to say that they wanted to have this kind of talent, this kind of storytelling on their platform. And we've seen that, of course, with the other SVOD services, and we'll continue to see that across the board in any distribution area where talent really rises to the top. So I think storytelling will always be at a premium. I think that's really important. The other thing I want to say is that what we're seeing is innovation. Innovation continues to be extremely important, and a great example of that is what TikTok has done with their app. The idea that the TikTok algorithm can serve content to you in a way that, for whatever reason, is more compelling than a variety of other similar type of applications, and has helped them rise to the top in this moment where UGC, user-generated content, music-driven content, these challenges that they put out there is really interesting. So innovation in the algorithm space is critical, and I think what that's going to play into is, where does advertising go? If you think about the biggest challenges in the entertainment industry that we've been facing over the last couple of years, the shift from advertising to subscription, now we have to find new ways to advertise to consumers, and TikTok's been doing some really interesting things with their new innovation interactivity on advertising. And then to the question of virtual reality, what I think is most interesting about virtual reality right now, the location-based business is sort of on freeze, obviously, as people aren't able to go out into the world, but that will open up. And I think to the point earlier that Tony made, there will be pent-up demand for people to get out to theaters, to malls, to beaches, to location-based entertainment companies like The Void and Dreamscape. They will come back. It's just a question of when and what does that look like. I'm not too concerned about that. But what I think is interesting is the idea that as we all sit in our homes or our apartments or wherever we are, and we're packed in with people, kids, families, pods, groups of people, we all want to consume entertainment. And oftentimes that's difficult to do if I've got a TV and I want to watch my show, and I've got 5 other people in the building who want to watch their show. Whether it's watching a show in a headset, playing a game in a headset, doing a health and wellness application like Supernatural, my workout routine, the headset now offers a one-to-one relationship for the consumer in a world that has become more dense in many ways. And I think that's a new trend. And frankly, a new selling point for VR that wasn't so apparent pre-COVID. So those are some of the items that I think are interesting that we're seeing now accelerated and even introduced into the consumer set.
Thank you, Jake. We're going to wrap up with just this initial discussion with Ted Schilowitz, who's the futurist at Paramount. And Ted always does a good job of kind of taking all of this information in and sort of giving us perspective. So, Ted, I know you have interesting things to talk about, things that you're seeing.
Well, maybe the most interesting thing is what's going on in my reality right outside my window right now. Because if everyone is talking, I just realized, oh yeah, it's the gardener day. And he just showed up and the mowing has been going on for the last, but I think he just stopped. I'm like, I'm thinking I might be able to get away with this and not have to go.
Well, you're okay. We want to hear from you.
So that's kind of what's interesting. I think what's interesting is that everybody touched on really interesting points that I tend to encapsulate in a lot of the discussions and things that I'm thinking about and going through on a daily basis about how we are using all of these tools in a much more robust way to start to mainstream these things, right? The folks on this panel are kind of on the tip of that spear, right? We've been experimenting with this stuff in normal times. We like it, we use it, we find its benefits. And now what we're discovering is that the world is coming to us and they're saying, so tell us what we should be doing and how we can take advantage of these tools in better ways. I think both Tony and Jake made the point that this is a sea change in the way that technology starts to lock in for people that were not as comfortable with it or found their day-to-day lives were very much in a certain type of practice and a certain sort of day-to-day. That day-to-day has changed. And I think a lot of people are finding it really interesting and valuable in certain ways. So we talk about the silver lining effect, right? Of removing the commute. So now you have the commute from the bedroom down to your home office or the living room, spending more time with your kids, spending more time with your family, spending time exploring and learning about new forms of entertainment, which Jake was touching around about VR. I'm a regular VR user before this, and now I use VR for workouts on a pretty regular basis, and I hop in and out of it all day. I'm also very bullish on spatial collaboration tools. So I'm a big AltSpace user. I'm a big spatial user in my Magic Leap and my HoloLens. We're starting to experiment with virtual meetings and virtual creative sessions because there's only so much of this you can do, this sort of flat screen Zoom effect, before your brain starts to wander and go into different ways. And I'm sure you've all seen this effect on long video chats. I often do them from a walk. Like I'll just hold my phone and walk just to kind of keep the energy going. But when you're actually in a VR or AR system and can have a virtual version of space where you can collaborate and be on whiteboards and share objects and share physical things, it becomes more real. And that essentially, we talk about AWE as a conference, right? There are things going on in the subset of this conference for folks that are very much having AR and VR headsets, which a lot of these attendees do, that they can hop into AltSpace for certain sessions and they can be in VR for certain sessions and AR for certain sessions beyond just this 2D video chat experience. So these are all good things.
Well, we're going to take some Q&A from the audience in one moment. I just wanted to ask you guys one general question, and you all sort of alluded to it, but what happens next? Like what happens tomorrow? The doors are open. I think production in LA is going to be starting again this week with new rules. Things are going to be opening up. What does hybrid look like? If you could give me some perspective, how does today and tomorrow look, this leap and just
Yeah. Well, I think hybrid looks a lot like this. And I think slowly people will realize safe distance dynamics for certain use cases. Things we're discussing is, can we have meetings outdoors on the lawn at the studio in beach chairs? Can we set up whiteboards outside and do things that way? Production is looking at what I call the summer camp effect, right? Where people quarantine together and actually work and live together completely isolated within an isolated bubble, like a biosphere, whether that's in a movie studio or a remote location, or taking over a large resort or hotel, and people literally live and work together and effectively self-quarantine that way. So there's a lot of really interesting things going on. And then more and more with these technology tool sets that we all have access to that are becoming more valuable and less expensive and going to scale. So there's just a lot of attack points that we have.
And I think what you're going to see, Lori, is you're going to have a lot of non-essential people who are always essential to a production, but the need to get on a plane and travel is going to really slim down. So the idea of traveling anywhere or doing anything unless you must do that is not going to happen. So you're going to need the collaboration tools to be able to start moving into virtual production, start moving into these other collaboration tools so that people feel like they're there. They're still a part of the entire team.
Tony?
I think we're good.
Oh, Jake, go ahead. Go ahead, Jake.
Well, I was going to say specifically, I think given that if hybrid is happening now, we're looking at summer, and a lot of people who traditionally would travel for vacations, send their kids to camps, are going to be looking and needing other options. And so a big opportunity is to solve for people who are no longer traveling long distance or no longer have the ability to send their kids off to camp. How do you supply entertainment to these people? Where does that come from? What does that look like? Do virtual platforms provide an opportunity, virtual camps, virtual training sessions, virtual vacations, virtual visits? That I think is going to be something that we will see some stories coming out of creative and entrepreneurial minds. And maybe they come from sports leagues. A lot of the sports leagues are looking to reactivate, but also, you know, all of the downstream minor leagues, if you will, academies, are looking to continue to engage young people and active people. So I think that may be a very interesting hybrid stopgap.
Oh, that's really interesting. Tony, I know you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I'd say sort of building on what Marcy and Ted were both saying on the production side, it's really kind of an interesting spectrum for us in that, you know, unscripted television is a little easier right now than premium scripted television in that you can get folks like Ellen back up and running at home. You can get, you know, TMZ working from home and shows like that. As you move into the more premium world, it does get trickier. And, you know, to Ted's point around the summer camp idea, a lot of folks are thinking about that now. Of how do you find places where you can control the environment and put people together in a bubble and make sure that everybody's protected that way. But then building on Marcy's point, where, you know, it's challenging to think about being on location on places right now. So I think what you're going to find is geography by geography, production by production, things will be coming up online in different sorts of ways. But we will be finding ourselves most likely in more controlled environments, like big studio lots in various parts of the world where you can control for that better. But what that does mean is, to some degree, you're not going to be in these giant sets with lots and lots of extras as much as you'll be in controlled environments and trying to leverage virtual production and VFX in places where you can. But there's going to be trade-offs and all of that, both economically, you know, time frame, who can be where, when. All of these things are going to make for a really interesting, you know, period of time here as we work ourselves back to normal.
Yeah.
Do we think that the consumer is going to be aware of all of these changes that are on the B2B side? Are they going to be cognizant of all of this?
I think right now you're finding everybody is, and they're kind of on board with that. Even things like, you know, some good news on YouTube and things like that. I think people are kind of in on it right now together, especially in that kind of like unscripted sort of world. On the premium side, people will probably be able to perceive to some degree a content that comes out in this period of time. In some cases, may be a little bit different than what was prior. But I think, again, every studio and every production team is going to have to sort of work through a version of that. But to a large degree, I do think humanity generally right now is very open to what's going on and kind of supportive of that.
Well,
and I would add.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Marcy.
Oh, go ahead, Marcy.
I was just going to say that I think that all of the work that we've done for the last 4 years in digi-doubles, in digital locations, and everything that we've done, scanning locations, creating virtual humans, all of these different things that we all were working on in the research and innovation side, it's now the moment, right? So if you are in a crowd scene, you know, and you want to have the feeling of a large crowd, you're just going to create digital crowds. And you are then going to have a virtual loop group who's going to be making those sounds. And so I think that, that is the new normal. I don't think we're ever going to go back to what it was. People are scared. And I think that that's okay too. I think that this is what pushes us into all of these new different areas that honestly, all of us collectively, even all the people at AWE have been working towards. And this is the moment that honestly sounds awful, but this is the moment that we've been waiting for, to be able to show what we've learned.
I was going to add that I think, to Marcy's point, this is the greatest stress test of new ideas that the world has really ever seen. And we also have to recognize there's an entirely new policy, a legislated policy that allows for entertainment to change. It's gambling. So we now have gambling, legalized gambling, integrated into sports television. Yesterday, was it yesterday? The Match, which was the Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning golf match, had record ratings for golf, and a significant component of it, whether consumers knew it or not, was that they were displaying prop bets up on the screen. And so, this is just the beginning, I think, of a very interesting new component of interactivity and a new type of entertainment format. So I think, we're seeing this all from a production standpoint, pipeline, content, interactivity, distribution. It's all being stress tested in a really interesting way right now at massive scale. And so we'll see what comes out of it based on successes and failures.
We're going to take a question, I believe, from the audience, from the community. I think they're coming in. So let's see if we get any questions from, there we are. Hi, David.
Hi. We do have a question from one of the questions is, can you tell a little bit as what you see as new storytelling ideas? Rather than creating the same new thing on a new platform, but are there new ways of telling stories now that you have mediums such as VR or AR?
Sure.
New stories, anybody? Ted?
Yeah. Well, I think there's two sides to that answer, right? One is a really interesting dynamic about what we refer to as production value and audiences' desire for authenticity and audiences' desire and acceptance of what we would consider lower thresholds of what makes production. To, I don't know if it was Tony or Jake was mentioning John Krasinski's Some Good News, right? Because it's so authentic and so wonderful. And for anybody that haven't watched it, you need to watch it. It's like watching a live action Pixar movie. You're just fully in tears every week when you watch it. It's just all the good stories, all the silver linings that are coming out of this crisis. The fact that he's doing it in his home with webcams and his wife is there and his kids are there, and the sort of overall dynamic of what production looks like, and everybody's sort of taken a page from that, right? All of the big network TV talk show hosts, Corbin and Colbert on our network, CBS Viacom, and Jimmy Kimmel, and et cetera, they've all sort of hopped on this understanding and idea of authenticity is what works right now. Production value is second to authenticity. So that's an interesting thing to learn about in terms of the humanity side of it. In terms of the different forms of entertainment, the idea of younger people wanting and demanding interactivity in their entertainment is starting to show itself very clearly. And I know Jake would be nodding his head violently if there he is.
Oh yeah.
It's happening. It means something. Jake was talking about his two kids and how meaningful it is to him on a personal level. We're seeing it grow in leaps and bounds now. And the companies that are willing to take those risks and step out of that comfort zone of this is the way TV or movies always was versus this is what TVs and movie can be with new platforms, new styles of storytelling, new voices in storytelling are the ones that are going to win big over this next 10-year period, that 2020 to 2030 timeframe.
Great. I think we actually have to wrap, David, so I'll let you take us out.
Okay. I'd like to say thank you very much. That was a fantastic panel. For those that still have questions, please reach out to the panelists. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to answer the questions that you have. Again, thank you very much, Lori, Ted, Marcy, Tony, and Jake. It's been a great panel. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.